Yes, hi everyone. Very happy to be here in this lovely afternoon, morning, depends on your time zone. So I'm going to give you a lecture today about generative tools for software developers. Most of them I use myself on a daily basis. Some of them I don't, but I heard that they're pretty good and will shortly introduce them. It's a very practical lecture, no equations, no almost no Gen AI in general. Um, there is also a small philosophic part in the end. I'm not sure where we'll be getting there. We'll see according to the time. If you have any questions during the lecture, please feel free to write them in the chat. From time to time, I will look at it and try to answer your questions. So okay. So just a minute about myself. So I have a bachelor degree from Bar-Ilan University. I've been working in the tech industry for almost 15 years, was a hardware engineer at Intel, did my master's degree on AI and machine learning at the Hebrew University, was the first employee and lead data scientist at a pretty successful startup called Imubit. I was then a director of AI at NVIDIA. Recently was the co-founder and CTO of Evermind, a startup that raised some money, but was unfortunately closed due to the October 7th war. So currently I'm a freelancer doing Gen AI consulting, workshops, etc. So a brief history about generative AI specifically for software developers. So it was actually the first commercially available and successful Gen AI product. I don't know how many of you were using it, but Tab9, which was a code completion tool, is pretty old in terms of AI standards. I started using it on around 2017, 2018, but it's been around since 2016. It started as a Canadian company and then acquired by an Israeli company and is currently an Israeli company. On around 2021, Github CoPilot, probably the most successful Gen AI tool today, generally, not only in terms of software development, was released in 2021. It was based on one of OpenAI models, which was called Codex. It was a fine-tuned version of GPT-3, which was fine-tuned on translating natural language commands and instructions to code. And this was the first version of GitHub Copilot. It wasn't widely available, I think, until 2022. Later, it was revealed by researchers from OpenAI that code in general is very, very useful for training large language models. And since then, a very big part of the data that is used to train LLMs is code, and therefore all LLMs know how to code pretty well, some of them even really, really well. On 2023, the code interpreter was added to ChatGPT. Like ChatGPT was able to produce code, but only on 2023 it was able to run code as well within some enclosed sandbox, which enabled a lot of applications, which we'll discuss shortly in a few minutes. And on 2024, Claude 3 was released by Anthropic, which reaches 85% on human benchmark. Human is a benchmark of coding challenges that are pretty extensive and elaborate. And this result is considered very, very good. It's actually much better than top human experts, which means that LLMs are able, like the state-of-the-art LLMs, are able to solve coding problems, very sophisticated coding problems, better than humans, meaning that they have reached superhuman capability. And today we have dozens of different tools available for software developers. I think that if if you try to like dive into it, you probably got maybe a bit lost with the abundance of tools, and there is a lot of overlap between the different tools. In this short lecture, I will try to cover the most prominent one, in my opinion, but the landscape is changing very, very rapidly. And I would give you maybe a spoiler to the end of the lecture. I think the way that we build software and the way we code today would be very, very different in 5 years. And I wouldn't say that we won't have a job, but the way we work and the people that actually can do programming development, software development, would be much more different than what we have today. So for the first part, I want to go over GitHub Copilot. I think at least some of you, I don't know, even maybe most of you, know GitHub Copilot. It's the most successful application, and there is a very good reason for it. It's one of the only generative AI tools that have two good advantages that almost no other Gen AI tools have. First one is that it's proactive instead of being reactive. It means that it pushes the suggestions to you when you need them, and you don't have to go and ask for things, which is the case in most of the Gen AI tools. And then you usually don't know how to ask or maybe when to ask, and you find yourself not really using it. So it's not the case with Copilot that is pushing suggestions to you in an active way. And the other one is that it sits as part of your workflow, which means it sits in the IDE, it knows what you're doing, it has context. And so these two very important advantages, and I think we're going to see a lot of tools that actually leverage this kind of context awareness and proactive method. A recent study by the Copilot team found out that people that use GitHub Copilot complete their tasks 55% faster, which means it takes for them around little less than half the time it would take for another programmer which is not using GitHub Copilot. 75% feel more fulfilled with their job, and 87% preserve mental effort on repetitive tasks, which I think is the most daunting task that software developers have. I myself can report that I think that I program at least 3 or 4 times faster when I use Copilot, and it really opened a lot more opportunities for me as a software developer and someone who does a lot of hands-on work and a lot of prototyping. It was reported on some occasions that OpenAI, 80% of OpenAI code is written by GitHub Copilot, and people were wondering how OpenAI is able to keep such a staggering gap from the market. And this is one of the reasons that they are sort of dogfooding their own product. And if you have to choose just one tool for your generative AI stack as a software developer, let it be GitHub Copilot. I think it's the most easy to understand how to use, it's the most effective, and obviously the most successful. And I want to give you a few practical tips to get better results when you use your Copilot. These are tips that were written by the creators of Copilot, so they're very based, and they know that a lot of people don't do it. I myself didn't do a lot of them until I learned them, so I wanted to present to you. The first one is that to get better results when you do code completion, give the Copilot as much context as possible. Here we can see an example, someone trying to create a markdown tool, a web tool that creates markdown documents. And we can see that it gives Copilot quite a lengthy explanation before the code about what the tool is doing, what the different features, what it should support. And then GitHub Copilot itself completes pretty much all of the code by itself, and we can see on live that this is actually working pretty well. So this is a very important tip. The more context you give, the more details that you give, the better results you're going to get from your Copilot. The second one is to be very specific. Don't be too general, otherwise you're not going to get the best results. It's the same with working with real human programmers. If you want to get good results, be specific. Here we can see a nice example. When a programmer asks to draw an ice cream cone with ice cream using a library called P5 of JavaScript. And on the first try, because this is very general, it gets something that doesn't look at all like an ice cream cone. So obviously a failed example of GitHub Copilot, and if you wouldn't know, then you would say, okay, this tool is not really working, I'm not going to use it anymore. But when it tries to do it much more details, and you can see here that it gives Copilot a lot more details about what exactly the shape should be, how it would look like, the Copilot is able to complete the code very successfully, doing a sort of a iterative process with the programmer itself that uses Copilot to fulfill small parts of the code at a time and not the entire code at once. And we can see that we get the exact results that we needed without writing even one letter of code. The only thing that a programmer does here is to divide it to the different sections like background and ice cream cone, etc. So this is something that is also very, very helpful. Another tip, which relates to the other tip, I won't go through this movie, you can see it later, I'll send the slides, is to aim for short completions. The shorter the completion you need Copilot to have, the more chances that it will be accurate and helpful. Don't try to aim for Copilot to write fully fledged functions from scratch. It is possible, but it's much better to actually divide your code into small subsections, use small comments, and just have Copilot completing 2 or 3 lines of code that depend on the context. It still means that you would have very large pieces of code that were completely written by Copilot. But the only thing here is that you would do it in a gradual manner, in an iterative manner. Here we can see it gives some instruction. You can see first, let's make the first letter of the sentence lowercase, which is, as you can see, part of the function description, but it also gives it in the code itself, and then Copilot just completes the code for him. The user don't have to actually write any code. So this is another useful tip. Another tip, which was, I think, almost nobody actually knows, I found out only when I read about it, the context that Copilot has to better complete your code depends not only on the codes that you're currently writing and the files that is currently open, it also looks on 2 or 3 more tabs that are open, either on your PyCharm or in VS Code. So if you have files that are connected to each other, maybe by inheritance or maybe by functions, it's very useful to keep them open as well. This would give a better context to Copilot, helping him provide better code completions for this task. Another useful tip is to just have good coding practices. And by good coding practices, I mean give meaningful names to functions, give meaningful names to variables, have the code structured well. This would really help GitHub Copilot produce better results. Here we can see that the user wrote authenticate user, which is a meaningful name. And as a result, the Copilot generated the exact function that the user needed. But on the other example, we can see the user wanted functions that generate a random password, but gave it a very, it is like a shortened version of random password, but not something that Copilot actually understands. And what we can see here is that Copilot just puts the code goes here and was completely unable to complete the code for the user. So again, keep good coding practices and you'll get much better results. And the other and last tip for GitHub Copilot, if you are building a function and you want the function to do something, especially if it's something that is not completely trivial, give give comments. Like when you write the comment, like the documentation of the function that you want, and then you wait for a Copilot to actually complete the actual code of the function. Give comments, give examples of what the input to the function is and what the output is. Again, this really helps Copilot to produce more accurate and better code for your needs. So these are a few really good tips. I've been using them a lot. Another
Copilot help me write steps for installing my.
Sorry, is that you can actually use GitHub Copilot for writing. I found it to be very, very helpful. I know that one of the things that companies struggle quite a lot with is documentation of code, not within the code. This is something trivial to do with GitHub Copilot, but externally, like writing markdowns, writing manuals, things like this. So GitHub Copilot actually does this very well. This means that GitHub Copilot can generate not only code, but can generate text in a very useful manner. And again, not as a ChatGPT fashion that just generate the entire text, but in a way that it generates inline texting, which is very useful.
In Markdown,
this example.
let's give it a shot. Let's make this numbered. And then we're going to tab through accepting everything Copilot gives us by default. It tells us to download it, the steps for that, then installing it, the detailed steps for that, following the instructions, the password. Then number 3, we're at starting.
We can stop here, but as we can see in this example, the user just wrote the start, write a numbered steps for installing MySQL, and GitHub Copilot wrote all the rest. And by the end of the video, we have a complete guide of how installing MySQL works. And this is more of a general guide, but you can also write very specific guides for your own software. So if you have, for example, some files that you want to document using a README, or maybe a bunch of files that you want to document using a README, have them open in VS Code and then open a new Markdown file and just write the title, something like, okay, this is the guide for how to use this and this files. And you would see that Copilot, maybe he wouldn't write it from scratch, but it would be extremely useful and extremely time-saving to use Copilot there. As you would see that most of the text that is written by him is actually quite good, and you don't have to write it yourself. Another thing that I use it for is answer technical email. I get some technical email, I copy it to like VS Code, and then I use Copilot to actually draft the response very fastly. Also, if I want to write a technical blog post with a lot of technical things and maybe things that are related to my code, again, very, very useful. So this is a really nice hack. Another last thing about GitHub Copilot is that they are launching their enterprise version. It is available for some customers. It's going to be generally available for everyone with few really nice features that I saw that are, in my opinion, extremely helpful. First one is that if you have a repository, you can ask questions about the repository directly from the GitHub website. Which is very nice. You can ask questions about issues. Where would I find the code that is related to these issues? What might I need fixing? You can ask it to explain the code, which is extremely useful when you ramp up on a code that you don't know, that is new to you. You can write commit messages from your IDE. It understands the changes that were made. It tracks the different Git branches, understand the changes that were made, and then helps you draft a nice commit message and even send it directly to Git. And also, you can open a pull request summary, and it would explain to you the different changes that were made in the pull request, and maybe it would review them as well if you ask it. Super useful, really, really time-saving. And you can see also that GenAI tools for software developers is much more than just coding. It helps you with most of the work. You know, they say that programming is actually like 10% programming and 90% debugging and reading code. So tools like Copilot can help you with all the other tasks as well, like understanding code, understanding pull requests, helping you find bugs, summarize changes, and so on. There is a link here to a demo. It's a pretty lengthy demo, around 17 minutes. Again, I would send you the slideshow so you wouldn't have to track it yourself. So this is about Copilot. Again, as I said, if you have to use just one paid tool, there is no free version to Copilot. Use this one. I did understand that quite a lot of you are already doing it, and hopefully these tips would serve you well. On the other side of code completion, we have the three big models that we have, the three LLMs that we have today. We have, as you know, we have ChatGPT, we have Claude by Anthropic, and we have Gemini by Google. And so I will go briefly over them, discuss the differences in terms of how they are being used for code writing and code understanding. But generally, you should know they all work pretty well for writing code and for debugging. You can copy code there, tell it how can I have this bug, please help me debug it. I use it quite a lot for code or libraries that I don't really know how to use and I need to understand from zero. I use it a lot for small questions. I don't use like Stack Overflow anymore. I only go to ChatGPT or Claude. Today I only use Claude. So ChatGPT, the first one, is probably the oldest of the bunch, have a 128K context window, which means like it's quite a lot of code. And also, but this one is paid, as you know, GPT-4 is actually paid. I think they are going to offer a free version sometimes in the next few months, but currently it is paid. You have to pay for it either through API or through the premium subscription. 3.5 is also okay. The only problem with it is that sometimes it gives wrong answers. Like it gives code that is not compiling or is using libraries that do not exist, which is a bit problematic. One of the nice things that I like about ChatGPT is it has a code interpreter. This means that when ChatGPT writes you some code, you can actually ask it to run it on some examples or on something that you're given, like you can give it files, you can give it tables, you can give it images, and it would run the code. So here we can see a very short example, but it is useful for much more complex use cases. So I asked him to write a Python code that reverses a string, and it recreated the code. And then I asked him, can you run this code on this string just to make sure this code actually works before I copy it to my IDE. And it is running the code and it is working as expected. And we can view the analysis, see how the code ran, and what was the input and what was the output. It's really useful. The most useful thing that it's being used for is for data analysis. You can upload CSVs. You can upload a lot of data-related things and ask him to do quite an elaborate and complex analysis. I specifically use it just to check if the code that he wrote actually works correctly before I run the code, because if it doesn't, then ChatGPT would fix it itself. It understands that the code did not provide good results, and it would provide you with a better code that fulfills what you want to do. Another nice thing is that ChatGPT have what we call GPTs, which is sort of an application that are sitting within ChatGPT, and there are a lot of coding applications, which means that it's the same as ChatGPT, but with tailored and optimized instructions and prompts behind the scenes for coding. So you have a lot. You can see here we have featured Code CoPilot, Code Smarter, Build Faster, Software Architect GPT, which helps you build software architecture documentation. And there are quite a lot of programming sort of applications that you can use. Honestly, I didn't try a lot of them, and I did find that with correct prompting and like really accurate prompting, you can get around the same results. But I think that at least some of them are really tailored for specific needs. And if you have any of these needs, this could be a very good option to use if you don't want to think about the kind of prompt that you're using and have more of a plug and play experience. So this is something very useful. So this is ChatGPT. One of the main problems, it's not only with ChatGPT, it's probably with almost all application, is that it provides outdated code. I think this is a nice example. What we can see here is that I asked him to give me a code for how to use ChatGPT itself. And since this is quite new, the code that it gives me is outdated, and there is no way to actually compile it. Unfortunately, this is a general problem with all models. It is not solved yet, even with models like ChatGPT that have access to the web or Gemini. It is not a solved problem yet. Hopefully, it's something that would be solved in the near future. And generally, it supports inputs of text, audio, and images. Google released their best models, Gemini 1.5, which is really nice because it have a context window of 1 million tokens, which is, you can fit like a huge code base within it. Also, something nice is that it support videos as well. So we can see here a very nice demo.
I intentionally wrote 3 bugs in my code here. This is a test project. I filmed each one of the bugs separately so you can see each one of these about a 10-second video. And then we have a text file, which is all the code base in a single text file. And I am basically giving the AI here a prompt. I'm going to send this off, and I'm just saying, hey, fix all the bugs in my code, create a little guide for me, and write the changes. Okay, we're using Gemini 1.5 Pro for the multimodal input. And what the bugs are, this is just a basic to-do app. I'm just trying to get a feel for what's possible here. If I play this here, but the to-dos aren't toggling, the theme switcher doesn't work, and then the login doesn't work. So basically it should toggle the, let's just watch the generation here. That was good timing.
So we don't have time to watch the full video, but it's really nice. This man uploaded a video of the bugs that he has in his front end, gave Gemini the full code base, and asked Gemini to actually solve this bug. And I would give you a spoiler to the end of the code. It was able to solve all the bugs, point to the different files, tell him what code needs to be written in which file, what the changes that need to be made. Really, really nice example of how you can combine the vision capabilities of LLMs to actually code and solve bugs better. And again, Gemini has a pretty nice potential because you can really upload huge code bases, unlike other models that have a bit smaller context window. And you can try it for free here. Everyone can use it. There is a link on the slide. You can use, as you can see, this is Gemini 1.5 Pro. It's free. I use it quite a lot. I don't know if it would stay free for a long time, but at least for now it is free. So use it while you can. Really, really nice for asking questions about code, solving bugs, and writing code, obviously. So this is Gemini, and now we're getting to the best in class, Claude 3. Claude 3, a very new model by Anthropic. It's currently considered the state of the art in terms of LLMs. It is better than GPT-4 and for all tasks and coding specifically. It has a pretty large context window, around 200,000 tokens, which is really nice. I found out that when I use it to code, we can do a lot of iterations around the code, like fixing, adding features, solving bugs, and it still remembers like the entire conversation and never steers off track and forgets what we were doing in the first place. So this is really nice. It supports text and images as well. It cannot run the code yet. Like, I mean, it doesn't have its own code interpreter, which Gemini and GPT-4 do have. Claude doesn't have, but they are aware of it, and they are going to add it soon. There are some good examples here of very nice prompts. Since we have like around 10 minutes, I won't go into them. But as I'll send you the slide, you would be able to see them. They are very tailored and very interesting prompts for doing very specific works very, very well. So one is for reviewing current code and finding bugs and latencies, etc. One is for making engineering decisions, especially for areas that you're not really familiar with. One is for code factoring, and just one that I want to show you because it's really nice is for code visualization. You give it a code, and you get a full visualization of what the code actually looks like in terms of logic. This really, really, really useful for codes that you don't know, for codes that you see for the first time. You ask Claude, this is the code, please create a mermaid. Mermaid, it's a kind of programming language for creating this kind of flows. Works really well. I really recommend it. And specifically, I really recommend following this guy, Matt Schumer. He's the co-founder of Hyperwrite, one of the most successful GenAI companies. And he's also a pretty prompt geek, if we can call it. So has really a lot of good examples of how to best use LLMs for all kinds of use cases, not only for software development. And all the examples that I gave you here are coming from his Twitter. Another nice thing about Claude 3 is that it has 2 free models. The best one, Opus, is not free. It costs around the same price as ChatGPT. But Haiku and Sonnet, which are free models, are pretty good in coding as well. So if you want some free LLM for coding, this is the one that I would use. Okay, so this wraps up the part about the LLMs. One of the best tools, in my opinion, for programmers is called Cursor. I use Cursor. This is my default IDE. And the thing that I love about Cursor is that it integrates chat directly into your working environment. So you can ask questions about your code, understand how to fix bugs, and understand to explain your code without the need to actually copy paste the code each time to the LLM or try to do it in a very more complex way. This is really nice. It helps you generate inline code completions. It helps you solve bugs directly from the terminal. I will give you just one nice example. So this is Cursor. This is how it looks. You can see I have my code here. This is some nice application that I programmed. And now I'm going to create a bug intentionally. And I'm going to try to run the code. Just sorry about that. Sorry. Okay. I'm going to try and run the code. As you can see, I get an invalid syntax. Obviously, this is just a third example. This is something I would probably fix myself, but I want to ask the chat here, which uses GPT-4, how to fix it. So I'm just going. You can see I have a debug with AI. So directly from the terminal, it sees the bug already, and all I have to do is just click and it would help me fix the bug. So it's going through some thought process behind the scenes, and eventually it tells me what I need to do. So you can see it identified the bug correctly. The conversation history was not initialized. It gives me the fix. But the nice thing here is that I can just apply the fix directly to the code by pressing display, apply to current file, and then it will just do it. It goes over the code, and you can see here that it completed. And after it finished, I can just select to accept the changes. So I don't need to do all this tedious copy pasting. As you can see, the code now is fixed. So really nice, and I can ask him to explain my code. and do all this kind of things. And if we're looking at it already, another nice tool. So by the way, this is free. For some, you have some quota for GPT-4, like I think a daily quota. And if you run out of it, you can use GPT 3.5 for free. And if you buy the premium version, then you can use GPT-4 and Claude 3 as well without any limitations. I think it doesn't cost a lot. I think like $10 to $15 a month. But I use the free version and it works really well. Another nice thing that we can see here is the tool called Codium, which is kind of like the cursor chat. This, by the way, works for just VS Code or JetBrains. If you use like any IDE that you use, you can download Codium. Again, this is also free. You can chat about your current code. You can do changes to the code. You can solve bugs with it. It's really, really nice. I give you just one example. You can see I have a function here, for example, and you can see that Codium asks me if I want to refactor the code, explain the code, or generate docstring for the code. I can ask it to generate a docstring. As you can see, the docstring was generated. I can apply it directly to the code, and then I press accept, and now I have a docstring for the function. If you are lazy in writing documentation, this is a really great tool. So I really recommend Cursor. I think it's one of the best IDEs in the market. If you're already familiar with VS Code, the transition would be pretty smooth. If you're not, if you don't want to move, you can use Codium just as well, which works with practically any IDE. And again, it's free. I really recommend it. Another tool which we won't go into because we really don't have much time. Okay, actually, we have 2 minutes. So Codium is an Israeli company, one of the most successful in the GenAI landscape. And what Codium does is that it helps you generate tests for your code. And this is something pretty useful. I think testing is one of the things that most of us programmers don't really like to do. So they do it for you. It is free for individuals, and it works really well. You can see if you look for a minute in this code, so you can see that I have test this function, which is part of the Codium application, and when I press it, okay, it doesn't work because I haven't signed in, but it does generate tests for my code. It also helped me understand the coverage of the different tests that I made. It can also help me explain my code, which is really nice. Another nice tool that they developed is an open source PR reviewer. So if you have a pull request, you can use they have this sort of GitHub extensions completely free that you can use for understanding the code. And they are working on a lot of more interesting stuff. So I really recommend looking at them. And again, the tool is free for individuals. So I highly recommend on using it. Few other tools, again, we won't get into, but I found out, I think this is the top tools that I found. What's the diff? It's a natural language summarization, again, for PRs. I think the reason that there are so many tools for this is because this is a really tedious and hard task. So I think that no wonder that you have these tools. AI Query, which is a nice tool for natural language to SQL. If you have problems writing SQL, you want to use natural language, it's really nice. Codey is a nice extension for VS Code that really understand the context of your code, not just the files that are open right now, but your entire repository, which is really, really helpful. So it helps you understand the bugs, not in the context of just your file, but in the context of your entire repos that is currently sitting on your computer. I found it to be pretty useful. Mintlify is a great tool for AI-generated documentation, which also enables you to have a chatbot that you can write talk with in natural language and get answers from the documentation of your applications, and another one which is called Bagasura, which helps you track bugs using AI. So these are the tools. We ran out of time. So there is, okay, I show you just one thing because it's really nice. Just let me see if there are any questions. Yeah, someone right here that Codium is perfect for unit tests. I agree. And yeah, GitHub CoPilot Chat, which is something that is also available as part of Copilot, has a lot of features. Some of them I covered, some of them are not, but like things like explain your code, etc. Again, as I said, pretty useful. And this is just a small glimpse of what the future of coding might look like. So this is a company, a pretty successful company called Cognition Labs. They released a tool called Devin. I bet some of you at least saw the demo, but we'll see it.
Hey, I'm Scott from Cognition AI, and today I'm really excited to introduce you to Devin, the first AI software engineer. Let me show you an example of Devin in action. I'm going to ask Devin to benchmark the performance of Llama on a couple different API providers. From now on, Devin is in the driver's seat. First, Devin makes a step-by-step plan of how to tackle the problem. After that, it builds the whole project using all the same tools that a human software engineer would use. Devin has its own command line, its own code editor, and even its own browser. In this case, Devin decides to use the browser to pull up API documentation so that it can read up and learn how to plug into each of these APIs. Here, Devin runs into an unexpected error. Devin actually decides to add a debugging print statement, reruns the code with the debugging print statement, and then uses the error in the logs to figure out how to fix the bug. Finally, Devin decides to build and deploy a website with full styling as the visualization.
So as you can see, a very nice tool. It's going to be soon available for everyone. Coding agent that you can give natural language instructions, and it would go and build everything for you. It would browse the web for the relevant documentation. It would use a command line interface to do different things. And you can check the website. They have a ton of really nice examples of how you give issues on GitHub, and it is completely able to solve it by you just give it the link of the GitHub issue, and the code is completely and it writes all the code and the PR request and everything, as also pushes it if you want. There are some open source alternatives to Devin, which works pretty well. One by Microsoft, another one by another company, and another one by Princeton University. And that's it. I have some slides, but more philosophical. But since we ran out of time, we'll have to finish at this point. And I have, I think, a few. If you have any more questions, you can ask them now through the chat. If not, I hope you had a good time and it was useful for you. Okay, someone asked here, okay, there are tools that know to detect if the code is written by AI. Supposedly, there are tools like this. I don't think they actually work. Safety concern on built-in ID Copilot in terms of company-sensitive data. This is a good question. Something that needs to be checked by the legal department. Usually, I'm not really that concerned about it. Copilot for enterprise specifically don't store any of your data, but even other ID copilots should have some privacy statements that should fulfill, I think, the top standards. Okay, thank you everyone. That's it.
תודה רבה, עמית, היה מעולה.
שמח לשמוע.